part of trust is like somebody is sincere. And then the other one is probably why you hired him. Is he competent? You touched on trusting people. And I think that's, how do you define trust?
I'll try to make this up on the spot.
That's okay.
I guess when Josh, I trust him for audio. So it's like, why do I trust him?
Yeah, why do you trust Josh?
I don't think there was a very specific moment in time that I trusted him. When I brought him on the team, I had gone through the interviews with him. I had my other audio engineers interview with him. They said he's got the core skill set that we need. And then it was just a time thing. Over time, he delivered. I found that if I left Josh alone, that he would do good things without me having to push him to do good things. One specific example is we often over-record the show and then he chops it down. And at first, I used to be really worried about like which parts he would keep in and wanting to make sure we got the main thing to be the main thing. And I had sort of forgotten about it for 4 or 5 months. And then I went back and I was doing a review with Andrea, one of our marketing people. And I said, oh, look, all the episodes are, this length. That's what I had asked for. And it was something that was beautiful because I had basically mentioned it once and he just kept it as a constant, very computer-like. And he kept that up. So that was a big +1 credit on the trust ledger that we have.
We do so much just automatically. We wake up in the morning and we get out of bed and we get a cup of coffee and we don't, we're just not even thinking, right? Our subconscious is doing it and our mind's going thinking about the day. And we don't often think about the words that we use. And, what in my work, what I do is sometimes people think I'm too picky about words, but words have meaning, and if words bring life into existence, then words are important. And so trust is a big one, right? And I most people I say, tell me what you think trust is. And I think people meant, it's like, well, how do I experience it? How do I feel it? But as you work with Josh, you think about that a second. When Josh says something, do you assess that he's sincere?
Not consciously.
And sincerity, it's hard to measure sincerity. It's like sincerity is if when somebody says something, it's consistent with what they're like their private conversations, because we're always talking to ourselves, right? So when Josh says something, do you think, well, he's thinking that, I'm sure he's thinking the same thing that he's saying.
Oh, I believe Josh is in sync with his words and his thoughts.
And you don't think about it, right? But that's part of trust, is like somebody is sincere. And then the other one is probably why you hired him. Is he competent?
Yes.
Right. So if you hire somebody that's not competent, you're going to jeopardize the trust, right? It's like you want to trust people, but you just hired somebody that's incompetent. Like, so you're going to have a problem. And people will do that. Like, oh, I think so-and-so will do a great job, but they're not competent. You can give them time to become competent, but that's going to impact trust. The other one is when Josh says he's going to do something, does he do it when he says he's going to do it, how you expect it to be done?
Yes.
So he's reliable.
Yep.
So those are the big. There's other ones, but those are the big components: is sincerity, competence, and reliability. And when we're working with people, we can actually make assessments when we select people. Are they trustworthy? And when we interview them, when we ask questions, we can make an assessment of, do I think this person's trustworthy or not? So it's interesting when you start getting into it.
How do you do that in such a short time of knowing somebody, the trustworthy exercise?
Yeah, I think several ways. One, behavioral interviewing is always good. Because it puts somebody on the spot to like, okay, this is how I handled this in the past. And interviewing is always interesting because you ask somebody a behavioral interview question and they might say, well, when you do this sort of thing, what you should do is like, no, I asked you, when in your situation, tell me about a time when you did this. And that's why behavioral interviewing is so important, is because they're explaining how they did something. Were they competent to do it? Were they reliable? Sincerity is a hard one. Whether, that you kind of have to pick up on. And then I think making reference calls, and that's always a challenge because, sometimes those are prepared and planned and that sort of thing. But if you ask the right questions and you just kind of like a podcast, you forget that the camera's rolling and the microphone's on after a while. Same thing can happen when you're doing reference calls. They sort of like, you just get in the conversation, they forget.